Well, in a flurry last night, Q spewed out a whole bunch more even after my second installment. So what I'm attempting to do is pick up the last of the February 11th and the one February 12th post, and we'll crank right through it. So one of the anonymous folks made a comment about experimental drug promises, etc., etc. And Q points out, what a coincidence, this board has more power and influence than anyone comprehends, and by making things publicly available. And I want to add to that, there's a comment both about veterans on the 8chan board, and about the Anons that are on 8chan and how valuable they are, and Q makes note of that, and it is certainly true. I find it very helpful and find lots of sources there. There are people there who hit all kinds of different angles at things. Lots of the stuff that they suggest, of course, is not accurate. But that's the point. The point is to go after it and look at it from every possible angle, and they do as well as anybody at doing that. And of course, we see lots of people on YouTube who provide different and distinct angles and a more reflective perspective about it hours and hours later, and sometimes after something pops up on the news. But the 8chan Anons are the first ones on the battlefront, and every time they give us great stuff, and they certainly do that for me. So oftentimes pointing me to other places or raising names of folks that places that I can look into. So another comment is, how long do we have to wait? An Anon says, for cures for cancer and other sicknesses. And Q responds both with respect to chatter amongst those in control has begun. They know we know, which means the public will know. Release prior to cover-up is one option. Public informed and collapse is another option. Which option? Q. And so basically, again, this is a multi-level response to an Anon comment about whether or not we're going to find cures for cancer and other sicknesses. It is a reflective and deflective response, but it also says both to the Anon, answers the Anon question, and also says to the dark folks, hey, look, which way do you want to have this? Would you like to release prior to cover up or trying to hide stuff? Or will we publicly acknowledge these things and create the collapse, which will, of course, say, you guys have been hiding this stuff for a long time. Next one is 733, and one of the Anons again says, ha 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 ha, does that not relate to Huma Abedin? And Q responds, and this goes again to the multiple levels and layers of this, and you can either say, well, gee, there are multiple layers and multiple options, therefore it's all just BS, or you can say there are multiple layers and levels because there are in fact multiple layers and levels. And Q responds by saying, double meanings work well against sniffers. So this goes back to the Mark Twain and the Alice in Wonderland quote that or suggestion that I made earlier, which is that there are multiple levels speaking to multiple parties about multiple things, and one of the comments, one of the layers is, hey, we're talking to the dark guys here, so pay attention. The next one is, again, an anonymous person, Anon, says, I hope someday Patriots, vets, and Anons get the respect that we deserve. Marine Anons have felt betrayed by the same people we are willing to die to protect. I've felt lost until you showed up in October. Thank you from the depths of my heart. And Q responds, and this is a fabulous response. So, we are with you, Patriot. We honor your service to our great country. Without people like you, the world would be lost. Godspeed. And it is much more than that. I mean, it is both that without these guys, and Q has pointed this out dozens of times, that the military is on Trump's side, and the military is the one group that he has had to consistently rely on, and that it covers over all the rest and provides his core, and military intelligence basically counteracts some of the false news that everybody else has been getting from these three-letter agencies. 735, again an anonymous speaks, released prior to cover-up, public informed and collapse. Q, there's one thing that concerns me, somewhat related to this, but more related to 60-40. The less the public knows, the more likely they are to falsely assign blame in the future, possibly even generations from now, is worth keeping in mind. So it's a comment made by an Anon, and Q responds, understand one simple fact. The U.S. is connected to the rest of the world. Knowing that, understand by default, if certain intel is released, it would cause a worldwide / mass suffering. We share the idea of open source, but value life and must make based decisions on outcomes and containability. So there are a couple things here to note. There are 3 or 4 things to note. The U.S. is connected to the rest of the world, but U.S. is capitalized, and U.S. is also us. The us is connected to the rest of the world. And so it is both us as a country, the United States, and us as a people, the humankind, the global community of all of us. And the other comment has to do with worldwide mass suffering, and a number of the people on it said, well, gee, maybe that would be noticed, maybe it would be news, maybe it would be this and that. But recognize that what we have is an infrastructure throughout the world that supports all of us. And a lot of that infrastructure right now is honeycombed with shadow government and with the bankers. And if you're going to bring it down, you can't collapse it all at once. If you do, you have a huge pile of dysfunctionality. The World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, among others, the United Nations, while they need to all go, as does the Federal Reserve, until we have something to put in place for it, it would create chaos everywhere, and there would be mass starvation. If there was no monetary system, no exchange, no international trade for a time because somebody pulled the plug, there would be millions, if not billions, of people starved. So, I mean, people make out that this needs to be, they need to see it all, and the response to that is, and it's very critical, the response, is it's not as simple as that, number one. And number two, people don't take account for the fact that this matrix has been built up for 240 years, at least. And you don't undo a 240-year matrix in a week and a half. It just doesn't work that way. And much as you would with a matrix, as you start to pull the pieces, you have to try to pull the pieces to leave as much of the infrastructure in place as you possibly can while you're doing it, and replacing it with what's real. And it's not a simple process. I mean, all of us want to see more. We want to be more involved. We want to be active. We want all of the unawakened to see that we're not really as flaky and as tinfoil as it appears. But the truth of the matter is, this has to, if there's a process ongoing, and it seems definitely that there is, and I will talk about that in a minute in even more ways, we have to appreciate that a lot of this stuff has to be done piecemeal, so, and behind the scenes. So Q says, do not read into this spelling structure area heavy lag and attack ongoing. And I took that to mean that there's the comment that is in the last posting actually has some structural sentence errors. And one of the anonymous says in the next posting, don't care about your sentence structure, just care to know how full Gitmo is gonna be. And Q responds, maximum capacity, and one in brackets, other prison being prepped. Maximum capacity from some of the other sources I've got is 13,000, and that there are something like 500 additional new employees being hired. I think at what we know publicly, there are only about 60 or 70 people being held there, but 1,300 would be, and take note of this, I think it's up to 13,000, excuse me, and take note of this, that the 13,000 reasonably corresponds with the so-called indictments that haven't been released. So is it true? Who knows? But if it's going to be full, that would be a pretty good indication. And it is obvious that there are renovations going on and that there are people being hired. I mean, those things are available. The one in brackets is interesting because it's not just a one, it's a one in brackets. And one in brackets oftentimes means Hillary Clinton, or it could mean some other primary people, and it could mean that they're putting a prison together in country for the political prisoners, or the primary political prisoners, or at least the ones that are here. And so it could be a rather exclusive place. I mean, I'm just speculating, but all right, so on 738, there's another anonymous one. The fact Q brought up Ginsburg, and then she landed on CNN the same day. Front page speaks volumes. We are missing something. And actually, she spoke 3 or 4 years before the Q drops. She was, I think, at Columbia, and of course, she made kind of crazy comments that the mainstream media finds perfect, which is that Hillary lost because there was a bunch of macho stuff going on, and that it all got clouded in sexism and macho. Well, from every side they ran at Trump to try to deflect away from the fact that Hillary was at the very best was a very weak candidate, and at the worst was the darkest person we'd ever seen, and that only the MSM hid that. So she is a very liberal justice. She is 84 years old. She has had fragile health for a long time. I think she had cancer for a while. But interestingly enough, on a personal level, she was a personal friend of Antonin Scalia. And it would surprise me if privately she doesn't know that he was taken out, not just simply had some kind of a heart problem with a pillow over his head in Southwest Texas. So Q's next comment is, here to stay, no you're not, and this references Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Obviously, if something happens to her in the next couple years, perhaps not 3, but in the next couple, Trump will get to replace her, and that would make a shift in the Supreme Court. Currently, it's fairly balanced, and Stevens and Kennedy kind of Kennedy at least sits in the middle. The bloc on the liberal side includes Ginsburg as the most senior member, and the bloc on the conservative side also has 4. So it could make a distinct shift in the Supreme Court, and perhaps we would get back to constitutional law again. Finally, there is a posting this morning at 8 o'clock that says the inner circle, Mika Brzezinski, background, family, careers, McLean, Virginia. The age of tech has hurt their ability to hide control. Majority today were born into the circle. That's born in quotes. Investigate those in front of the camera who scream the loudest. These people are really stupid. The end is near. The media cleanse / JFK. So it is possible. Now there's another release, I think, coming on the JFK business. That's something to take into account. Mika Brzezinski is Zbigniew Brzezinski's daughter, one of his 3 children. He is he was a Polish political scientist and diplomat and advisor. He was active in the President Lyndon Johnson's, the nastiest of our modern presidents, and Jimmy Carter's. He was an insider for Jimmy Carter. He is a product of the Trilateral Commission. He's on the Council of Foreign Relations. He set up the Trilateral Commission along with David Rockefeller, which is kind of as nasty as it possibly gets. He was an ongoing Bilderberger. Brzezinski looked like the counterpart to Henry Kissinger, but they were twins of a different mother, and they operated ostensibly on both sides of the political fence, one on each side, but in truth, there was hardly any difference between them. They both played the same game, they played the same song, and everything about them ended up being the same. They just advised different people. So, and Mika Brzezinski has also recently become the partner of her counterpart in Morning Joe, who is Joe Scarborough. And when Joe was a Republican congressman, one of the things that Trump has pointed out is that in July of 2001, a woman named Lori Klausutis was found dead behind the desk of his congressman's district office. There was an autopsy report found that she had been feeling unwell, had heart problems, and had caused her to fall on the desk and hit her head. There was apparently no signs of foul play. Scarborough had announced his resignation a few months before that, but there is also lots of speculation around it. And Trump has posted tweets on a couple of occasions, at least one that I know of, that there may be more to this story than Scarborough would like to have people know. Obviously, like many who have resigned, and this guy resigned 17 years before where we are now, people claim that they'd like to go home to be with their family, and that's what Scarborough did. And to quote Podesta, which is an interesting quote, Podesta says when they want to be with their family, that never means that they want to be with their family. It means something else. And in this case, what I can say about Podesta is that's probably true. It probably was true. And I'm looking forward to many, many more resignations in Congress. Let's pay attention. One of the other things that we need to do, which is a sideline to this, in addition to the MSM note that Q brought out, is that we must once again go after the 164 abuse complaints against congressmen that cost taxpayers $17 million. When those people are exposed, the whole world explodes in Congress, because there would be mass resignations and there would be an awful lot of opposition and new candidates coming up that would totally change the face of Congress. And maybe we'd actually have somebody in the 535, the 435 in the House, and the 100 in the Senate, somebody that would come up and actually speak truth to us on an unabashed way and talk about 9/11 and Sandy Hook and 100 other things, the false flags, and the strings that are being tugged behind the scenes by the shadow government to get what it wants. So I look forward to all of this. If you like what I have to say, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe, hit the bell if you'd like to be notified. I love the comments. Things are absolutely fabulous. You guys pick up holes that I miss. I can't get it all, and I'm trying to put it through so that it goes blankety blankety blank right straight through it, rather than mull over 14 different alternatives and consider all kinds of other crazy stuff. So I'm doing the best I can to keep this succinct and straightforward, and if you appreciate it, I sure like to have you join me. And remember, let's unite the 10 million. Let's get the folks on board. Let's move this process to the next level and make sure that we have enough people behind this movement, what Q has brought to us, so that no matter how it turns out, we win. Thanks.